When two event guards tried to remove a decorated Army Ranger from his son's police academy graduation, nobody could have predicted that 6 of his former teammates would rise from the crowd, bringing the entire auditorium to a standstill without uttering a single word. Before we continue, if you're watching our video for the first time, we'd be truly grateful for your support. Please bless us by hitting that subscribe button. Isaiah Ramsey felt the familiar weight of his dress uniform as he found his seat in the 3rd row of the city's grand auditorium. The air was thick with a mixture of cheap perfume, floor polish, and the electric buzz of anticipation. Families were dressed in their Sunday best, holding small bouquets and homemade signs. Today, his son, Caleb, was graduating from the police academy, trading a college dream for a commitment to service, a path Isaiah knew all too well. He had driven 12 hours straight from his small home in Georgia, polishing his boots to a mirror shine at a rest stop just outside the city limits. It wasn't about showing off. It was about respect for the uniform, for the occasion, for his son. His posture was ramrod straight, a habit forged over 25 years in the Army, a stark contrast to the slumping shoulders of the man next to him. His face, etched with the fine lines of someone who had seen too much sun and too little sleep, was a mask of calm pride. He ignored the sideways glances, the quick whisper that followed the sight of a tall black man in full military dress. He was used to being an island, a curiosity. He pulled a worn photo from his breast pocket, his late wife, Maria, holding a 5-year-old Caleb on her shoulders, both of them beaming. He slipped it back into his pocket, a silent promise to her that he wouldn't miss this day. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd as the ceremony began. Speeches were made, platitudes offered about courage and sacrifice. Isaiah's focus was singular, locked on the rows of young cadets seated on the stage. He spotted Caleb, his jaw set with the same determination Maria once had. It felt like only yesterday he was teaching him how to tie his shoes, and now he was about to wear a badge. Pride swelled in his chest, a feeling so potent it almost ached. But as the city's police chief droned on about tradition, a subtle movement at the side of the room caught his eye. 2 men in ill-fitting black blazers with event staff embroidered on the chest were moving down the aisle. One was short and stocky, his face flushed with self-importance. The other was tall and gaunt, nervously chewing on his lip. They weren't looking for an empty seat. They were looking for him. The 2 guards stopped at the end of his row, their presence a sudden, unwelcome disruption. The stocky one, whose name tag read Simmons, leaned in, his voice a low, conspiratorial whisper. "Excuse me, sir. We're going to have to ask you to move." Isaiah turned his head slowly, his expression unchanging. "Is there a problem with my seat?" The taller guard, Croft, shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "This section is for immediate family of the cadets only." Isaiah blinked once. A slow, deliberate motion. He reached into his uniform, not for the photo, but for the printed invitation he'd been sent. It clearly stated, "Family seating, rows 1 to 5. He held it out for them to see. "My son is Caleb Ramsey. This is my assigned seat." Simmons didn't even glance at the paper. His eyes narrowed. "We've had a complaint. We have some seats available at the upper balcony. It would be better if you moved back there." There it was, the familiar coded language of exclusion. It wasn't about a complaint or a seating arrangement. It was about him, his uniform, his presence in the 3rd row. Isaiah's voice dropped, losing its warmth and becoming something harder, like stone. "I drove 12 hours to see my son graduate. I'm not moving." A woman sitting nearby shot him a nervous look before quickly turning away. The quiet hum of the auditorium seemed to dim around them as a small bubble of tension formed. Simmons puffed out his chest. "Sir, I'm not going to ask you again. Let's not make a scene." Isaiah looked him directly in the eye, his gaze steady and unflinching. "You're the only one making a scene, and you can ask as many times as you like. My answer will be the same." He then turned his attention back to the stage, a clear dismissal. For him, the conversation was over. But Simmons and Croft remained, their indecision turning to frustration. They hadn't expected such calm defiance. They had expected either compliance or an angry outburst, both of which they knew how to handle. This quiet, immovable dignity was something else entirely. It was then that a man 3 rows behind Isaiah stood up. He was broad-shouldered, with a clean-shaven head and a stillness that mirrored Isaiah's own. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the 2 guards. A moment later, on the other side of the aisle, another man rose, then another near the back, and another. 4 men in total, all standing in silence, scattered throughout the audience, but united by a single, invisible thread. The guards hadn't noticed them yet, but their moment of reckoning was fast approaching. Isaiah felt a tremor in his memory, a pull backward in time. The auditorium faded, replaced by the dust and suffocating heat of a narrow valley in Afghanistan. It was 12 years ago, an ambush that had erupted out of the quiet afternoon. Their convoy was pinned down, and a young private named Marcus was trapped under a disabled vehicle, his leg crushed. Gunfire rained down from the ridge above, kicking up spurts of dirt all around them. While the rest of the unit scrambled for cover, Isaiah had moved forward. He didn't run. He moved with a purpose that seemed to bend the chaos around him. He reached Marcus, who was pale with shock and pain. "It's no good, Sergeant," Marcus had gasped. "You gotta go." Isaiah ignored him, grabbing the edge of the twisted metal. He braced himself, his muscles screaming in protest, and lifted. For a few impossible seconds, the weight of the vehicle rose just enough for 2 other squad members to pull Marcus free. That day, Isaiah had carried Marcus 200 yards through open fire to the medevac chopper. He never spoke of it again, but Marcus never forgot. Back in the auditorium, the man standing 3 rows back was Marcus. He hadn't seen Isaiah in 5 years, but when the call had come about Caleb's graduation, he'd booked a flight without a second thought. He watched the guards, his calm expression belying the cold fury building inside him. The man who had saved his life was being harassed over a folding chair. Simmons, unaware of the silent sentinels watching his every move, decided to force the issue. He reached out and placed a hand on Isaiah's uniformed shoulder. "Sir, you're coming with us. Now." The touch was a violation, a line crossed. Before Isaiah could even react, Marcus's voice cut through the air. It wasn't loud, but it carried the chilling authority of a battlefield command. "I'd take your hand off him." Simmons froze, turning to see Marcus standing there, his eyes like chips of ice. "Who the hell are you?" Croft stammered, finally noticing the other men who were now standing. 2 more had risen, making a total of 6. They began to move, not quickly, but with a fluid, deliberate pace, converging on the scene from different directions. They formed a loose, protective semicircle behind Isaiah's row, their presence alone a formidable barrier. The chief of police on stage faltered in his speech, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. The audience was no longer watching him. They were watching the silent drama unfolding in the third row. Simmons's hand dropped from Isaiah's shoulder as if it had been burned. He and Croft exchanged panicked glances. These weren't just concerned onlookers. The way they moved, the way they stood, the way they watched with an unnerving, predatory stillness. It was something they'd only seen in movies. They were completely out of their depth, and they knew it. The ceremony ground to a halt. The proud, festive energy had evaporated, replaced by a thick, anxious silence. On stage, Caleb Ramsey was on his feet, his fists clenched at his sides, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. He saw his father, a man who had faced down enemies of the state, being treated like a criminal. He saw the guards, puffed up with petty authority, and then he saw them, the other men. He didn't know all their names, but he knew who they were. They were the legends from his father's stories, the men who were more than friends. They were brothers, forged in fire. A man in a suit, the venue's head of security, was now hurrying down the aisle, his face a mixture of confusion and alarm. He arrived to find his two guards pale and frozen, faced by 6 silent men who looked as if they were carved from granite. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Marcus, still without raising his voice, answered him. "You're about to tell me." The head of security looked from Marcus to Isaiah, finally noticing the decorated uniform and the quiet, unbreakable dignity of the man at the center of it all. The realization of the colossal mistake his staff had made began to dawn on him. He turned on Simmons and Croft, his whisper a furious hiss. "Get back, now." The two guards practically scrambled over each other to obey, retreating up the aisle in disgrace. The head of security then turned to Isaiah, his expression pleading. "Sir, Master Sergeant, my deepest apologies. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Isaiah simply gave a slow, deliberate nod. He didn't need an apology. The point had been made. One by one, the 6 men sat back down, their silent duty complete. The ceremony shakily resumed, but the room was forever changed. When the announcer finally called out, "Cadet Caleb Ramsey," a sound started. It wasn't the scattered clapping of a few families. It was a slow, rhythmic, powerful applause, started by the 6 soldiers and quickly joined by everyone in the auditorium. It was a wave of sound, a thunderous show of respect, not just for the son, but for the father. Later, outside in the cool evening air, Caleb hugged his father tightly. "I was so angry, Dad, I was ready to walk off that stage." Isaiah placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "I know, and that's why you didn't. Your job today was to graduate. My job was to watch you do it. We don't let anyone take our dignity. We don't give them that power by reacting with the anger they expect." He looked over at the 6 men who stood talking quietly nearby. "Real strength isn't about shouting, son. It's about knowing who you are and having brothers who will stand in the silence with you." Caleb looked at his father, and for the first time, he didn't just see a hero from an old war. He saw a man whose greatest battles were fought and won in the quiet moments, with nothing but his own unshakable integrity. as a shield.